Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back into another edition of Keytime Sports. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to Keytime Sports, Key City Sports, and the Key on Millions.co. Here is my profile, media feed. Well, first profile, media feed, and live merchandise. We will also be having new merchandise this month and the coming months ahead. So now, we had a good 4-game slate yesterday in the NBA. The first one I want to talk about, it was pretty much, a blowout from end to end. And San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. Now, one thing I can say about the Spurs, we all know that they are on the same level as the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I would not be surprised if both of those teams match up in the Western Conference Finals. I don't. So now, we look at their starters, and pretty much 3 of their starters had a good game. De'Aaron Fox didn't have a good game, only 7 points in 31 minutes. That's bad. Julian Champagne, 24 minutes and 3 points. The bench, Harrison Barnes, 17 minutes, 3 points. Kelly Olynyk, 4 minutes, 5 points. Lindy Waters the third, 0 points. Keldon Johnson, 3 points. Carter Bryant, 0 points. Bismack Biyombo, 0 points. Luke Cornett, 2 points. Jordan McLaughlin, 2 points. And Dylan Harper, 22 minutes, 8 points. So we all know that the Spurs, they are just getting prepared for the playoffs. That's all I think, because both of these teams, they have 20 some odd games left, and within another month and a half, the playoffs will be here. So we're getting down to that nitty gritty time of the NBA season where you can't lose too many games, because that would make the difference. You will have a difference of having home court advantage in the first round or going on the road in the first round. So now the New York Knicks, they are still at the 3rd spot in the Eastern Conference, and the Spurs are still 2nd in the Western Conference. Now, do I see both of these teams making it to the NBA Finals? No, I don't. Because by default, no matter what people are saying about the Detroit Pistons, I still have the Boston Celtics coming out of the East, because I don't think the Detroit Pistons are experienced enough for this elusive playoff run that they are about to go on. But obviously, they are the young dogs, new guys on the block. Who knows? They probably can ruffle some feathers, and we are probably underestimating them. But it remains to be seen. We go with experienced bunches before we go with the inexperienced bunch. So when it comes to the New York Knicks, as far as their starters concerned, everybody was very balanced. You had OG Anunoby, 12 points. Karl Anthony Towns, 12 points. Josh Hart, he is strictly out there defensively. He's a defensive specialist. He had 10 points, which is obviously a plus. Mikal Bridges had 25 points, and Jalen Brunson had 24 points. Now, when it comes to the bench, this is really where the bench pretty much falls off, because you have Jeremy Schoen, 1 point in 2 minutes. So Mohamed Dwara, 14 points. Mitchell Robinson, 4 points. Ariel Hakaporti, 2 points. Landry Shamet, 7 points. Jose Alvarado, 3 points. And you had Kevin McCullough Jr. and Tyler Kolek with 0 points respectively. And Jordan Clarkson didn't play because of coach's decision. So future aspect of this, I could see Potential playoff matchups when it comes to both of these teams. I'm going to go back to the standings. Potential playoff matchups would be for the Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I'm going to get into the Philadelphia 76ers a little bit later on in the show, but I could see in this series where the New York Knicks, I could see them winning this series because you don't know what Joel Embiid, you don't know what his health will be like. And Tyrese Maxey, a lot of nights he's hit and miss because some nights he can score 35 and then other nights he can barely put up 20 points. So when you have that inconsistent factor when it comes to scoring, and with Tyrese Maxey being one of the top scorers for the Philadelphia 76ers, it puts every 76ers fan at a standstill. Are they going to be able to get past the first round? Because for the last 5 years, it's been either a first or a second round exit with the Philadelphia 76ers. And for me, I really don't know if I can make a prediction on how far they are going to go in the playoffs because, like I said, we don't know what Joel Embiid is going to do. And plus, when it comes to the 76ers bench production, it's pretty much one of the worst in the NBA. So that's all I have to say about the New York Knicks and their potential playoff opponent. Now let me get to the next game that is on the list. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. This is obviously another potential playoff matchup that I've been talking about. Let's go down to the Western Conference. Let's go out to the Wild Wild West, maybe. So, 4 and 5 in the Western Conference, respectfully, is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. And I go back to the game that we all saw yesterday when it comes to the Minnesota Timberwolves and their starters. You had Julius Randle, 14 points. Jaden McDaniels, 20 points. Rudy Gobert, 7 points. Dante DiVincenzo, 17 points. Anthony Edwards, 21 points. Now, I like Anthony Edwards averaging the mid-20s. It doesn't seem like he have to carry. It didn't seem like last night that he had to carry the team like he had to do in the past, where he had to score 35 to 40 points to keep Minnesota afloat. And Naz Reid, they only had Naz Reid, 11 points, Ayo Dezamu, 9 points, and Bones Highland, 18 points. They only had 3 guys come off the bench, and it seems like everybody had a very efficient shooting night. And pretty much we already knew that the Minnesota Timberwolves was going to be in the thick of things, in the conversation for a playoff spot. But now, is it time for the Minnesota Timberwolves to take the next step? Yes, it is, because we've seen them in the Western Conference multiple times in the past 3 years. We've seen them play against the Denver Nuggets multiple times within the past 4 years. Now let's see if they can take that next step and possibly play OKC in the Western Conference Finals or the San Antonio Spurs. And I cannot forget about the Houston Rockets. I can't, because pretty much anybody, and I do mean anybody, can come out of the West. And I'm pretty much saying this on a year in and year out basis, because you all see how the Western Conference pretty much shapes up every year. You will have teams, the difference between 1 and 7 is only by 13 games. And I'm not even going to say that. The difference between 1 and 4 in the Western Conference is 9 games. So a team that goes on an 8-9 game win streak and the teams at the top of the West, they lose 2 or 3 games, that could be pretty much earth-shattering for one of these teams in the Western Conference. But as I can say, when it comes to the Denver Nuggets, hey, they're pretty much a shell of themselves from where they were just a few years ago. Cameron Johnson, 23 minutes, 0 points. He had 6 shot attempts, which is bad, and he didn't make any. Nikola Jokic, 35 points. Jamal Murray, 25 points. Christian Braun, 15 points. Julian Swaller, 2 points. Bench production, and I'm going to tell you all something. The bench production last night for the Denver Nuggets was not up to par. Zeke Naji, 2 points. You had Deron Holmes II, 0 points. Jonas Valanciunas, 2 points. Tim Hardaway Jr., 17 points. Bruce Brown, 6 points. Jalen Pickett, 4 points. KJ Simpson, 0 points. Now I'm going to say this. I would not be surprised if the Denver Nuggets get knocked out of the first round by the Minnesota Timberwolves, if that so happens to be their first round opponent, because we got 6 weeks left before the NBA playoffs come. We have 6 weeks. But I just don't see the Denver Nuggets bench production being as strong as it once was going into last season and the previous seasons prior to that. I think that Minnesota, they can beat any team that's in front of them. As I go back to the Western Conference, Minnesota, they can beat Houston. Minnesota can beat San Antonio, and Minnesota, it all depends on what Minnesota team I'm going to see, because I'm not willing to say that Minnesota can beat OKC in a 7-game series, and I'm not willing to say that about any team when it comes to trying to defeat an NBA champion, defending NBA champion. So what I can say about the Minnesota Timberwolves, best case scenario, they make it to the NBA Finals. Worst case scenario, the Minnesota Timberwolves get knocked out of the second round for the third time in the last 5 years. The last 5 years, that is what the scenario would be for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, Denver, it is pretty much what is the bench production for Denver going to look like in the playoffs? Because the Denver Nuggets, I know I'm going out on a limb here, but the Denver Nuggets, they could pretty much, have a gentleman's sweep. And when I say a gentleman's sweep, where Denver, they win 1 game, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, if that is their playoff opponent, wins the next 4. I can see that happening. And now, last night, the deficit that the Denver Nuggets had was the closest deficit that the Denver Nuggets had was 7 points. The largest lead the Denver Nuggets had was 11. Minnesota had a 14-point lead, going into the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. See, this is 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and pretty much Minnesota was very efficient on down the stretch. Here is Jamal Murray. Well, excuse me, not Jamal Murray, Julian Swaller. He missed the shot, and his teammate put it back in. Now it's down to 7. But here is Naz Reid for a 3-point shot. And that was pretty much game over, because they did not relinquish the lead after this. It was back down to 8 points, an 8-point deficit for the Denver Nuggets. But they had too much, the Minnesota Timberwolves had too much firepower down the stretch. As you can see, Murray for 3, he missed. Back out to Naz Reid, and Naz Reid had a very efficient night. So they were up to 12, and it was pretty much all she wrote. Minnesota goes up by 11, and once we get to the end point, it was pretty much 9 with under 2 minutes left, and that was pretty much game over there. And we can see where this is going. This was a critical loss for the Denver Nuggets because they won't have home court advantage in the playoffs in the first round because they lost to a team that is in front of them. Now, Denver, they've lost 2 straight games, and like I've been saying throughout the last few weeks, if you go on a losing streak, that may be the difference between hosting a playoff series or going on the road to play in the playoffs. And the Denver Nuggets, they see what is happening. So the next game I am going to cover is both of these teams in the Eastern Conference have a chance at making the playoffs. The Detroit Pistons are the best team in the Eastern Conference record-wise, but I just do not think that they will be able to hold up when the playoffs get here. Tobias Harris, 23 points. Duncan Robinson, 25 minutes, 0 points. He only had 4 shots. He wasn't efficient, but he needs more shot attempts. So I'm not going to go in too much on that statistic. Jalen Duren, 16 points. Cade Cunningham, 29 points. Azur Thompson, 9 points. Bench production, Paul Reed, 5 points. Ronald Holland II, 11 points. Javonte Green, 3 points. Caris LeVert, 8 points. Dennis Jenkins, 2 points. When it comes to the Detroit Pistons, one thing I can say about the Detroit Pistons, it's just about they don't have much playoff experience. They don't, because outside of last season, this team just 3 years ago was the worst team in the NBA. So they're still learning what a playoff atmosphere is. And Orlando Magic, they are still learning about what a playoff atmosphere is. Even though that Orlando has been in the playoffs the last 3 years, they haven't gotten past the second round once. So you have 2 young up-and-coming teams, and the Pistons, they are the 3rd youngest team in the NBA at 26. Orlando Magic, they are the 4th youngest team in the NBA at 23. So both of these teams are still trying to figure out what is a playoff atmosphere and how to get past the second round. Now, for the Detroit Pistons, how can the Detroit Pistons get past the first round? That's what they need to be focused on, because obviously we see Cade Cunningham. He is very efficient, and I don't know why that he is. I do know why he is one of the MVP front runners. But as far as the Detroit Pistons as a whole, without Cade Cunningham, the Detroit Pistons would not be in the position they are in. Let's just speak facts, America, because Detroit Pistons without Cade Cunningham, where would they be? They would be one of the teams that are in the bottom of the Eastern Conference. They would be right there with Milwaukee, Chicago, Washington, Brooklyn, and Indiana, if it wasn't for Cade Cunningham being on the efficient streak that he is on. Now, Orlando Magic, I don't see them dropping. If they do drop, they will be at the 8th spot. But I don't see them dropping no lower than number 8. For the Detroit Pistons, best record in the East, I don't see them dropping. But one thing I can say is, if it comes down to Detroit and Boston in the Eastern Conference, I'm picking Boston. I really am. I'm picking Boston because Jaylen Brown, he has been on a hot streak throughout the entirety of this season, and I don't know why Jaylen Brown isn't in the conversation for MVP. I just don't know why. And when we look at where the Boston Celtics were projected to be at the start of the season, they were supposed to be in the same spot that the Orlando Magic was in. And I had the Boston Celtics finishing 7th or 8th. I did. But I can admit I was wrong, and Jaylen Brown has shut everybody up because Boston, they just don't have Jason Tatum to depend on. And we are pretty much waiting on the return of Jason Tatum. That is if he is coming back. A lot of sources and reports said that Jason Tatum would come back March 1st or early March. So we are in that time frame of him coming back. So within the next few days, we should be hearing something. We should hear an update on Jason Tatum any day now. Any day now. But back to what I was saying with the Boston Celtics. Boston Celtics are going to be one of those teams that are going to be in the playoff conversation no matter what. And Detroit Pistons, the Boston Celtics are on the Detroit Pistons' heels. And can the Detroit Pistons hold up? Can they hold up? That's a question that everybody is asking. But the next game I am going to cover, well, one thing that I am going to do is, next game I am going to cover is, well, first off, I'm going to give you all some clips. Coming down the stretch, it was a tie game, and, well, a tight game, actually. And Cade Cunningham, very efficient shooter. As you can see, that was 2 of his 39 points last night. And, 2 of his 29 points last night. And the Detroit Pistons are a team that is young and upcoming, and they are pretty much not afraid to ruffle any feathers and show people like me and other people, these NBA pundits, that they are worthy of getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I believe the Eastern Conference Finals for the Pistons, that is pretty much outlandish, because the Detroit Pistons, I'll believe it when I see it, because this is the second time in the last, I'm going to say 15 years, that the Detroit Pistons are going to make the playoffs. So we don't have much of a track record on the Detroit Pistons. We just don't. And as we can see, here's the next game I am going to cover. The Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics can pretty much be a playoff matchup within itself. Because as you can see, right here, the Philadelphia 76ers, Dominique Barlow, 14 points. Andre Drummond, 10 points. Kelly Oubre Jr., not good at all, 34 minutes, 4 points. Tyrese Maxey, 33 points. VJ Edgecombe, 23 points. We look at bench production. Bench production, they didn't have any bench production last night, as you can see when it comes to these statistics. Trenton Watford, 4 points. Adam Bona, 5 points. Cameron Payne, 5 minutes, 0 points. Quentin Grimes, 27 minutes, 5 points. For the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm going to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers after the Boston Celtics. Boston Celtics, Sam Hauser, 8 points. That's pretty much his average. Namis Quetta, 20 minutes, 27 points. He averaged a point a minute, which is very efficient. Derek White, 21 points. Jaylen Brown, 27 points. Baylor Shearman, 12 points. Delano Barton, 0 points. Nikola Vucevic, 11 points. Peyton Pritchard, 0 points. Jordan Walsh, 6 points. Hugo Gonzalez, 2 points. Now, one thing about the 76ers. One player that you don't see that should be right here in the thick of things is Joel Embiid. And he has been injured for the last month and a half. I can say this. Injuries have derailed Joel Embiid's career. He hasn't been healthy for a full season yet in his career. And that is one thing I hope somebody clip this. Joel Embiid, you can always book that he is going to miss a minimum, and I'm going to say this, a minimum of 10 games each season, no matter what. Possibly more. But 10 games is the minimum he is going to miss. And pretty much the 76ers coming into this season, we had them in the same boat as the Boston Celtics, but the Philadelphia 76ers, they have stayed right there at that 6 and 7 spot in the East. Can they increase their record and get a better seeding for the playoffs? I don't think so, because I don't see the Knicks losing much down the stretch. I don't see the Cavaliers losing much down the stretch. I don't see the Toronto Raptors losing down the stretch either. Losing as many games down the stretch as Philadelphia is going to lose, because in the last 10 games, Philadelphia has won 4 of their last 10, and for the remaining of their schedule, it's going to be tough for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said earlier in the show, I would be surprised if Philadelphia somehow plays Boston or they play the New York Knicks, because more than likely I'll have Boston or the Knicks beating the Philadelphia 76ers, because we just don't know what Tyrese Maxey we are going to see. We don't know if Joel Embiid is going to be healthy in the playoffs, and we just don't know if bench production is going to play up to the par that is needed to play in the playoffs for the Philadelphia 76ers. So 76ers, they are between a rock and a hard place. The Boston Celtics are one of those teams that I've been saying it throughout the entirety of the previous month and the last 3 weeks, that the Boston Celtics are the best team in the East no matter what. And that's all I'm going to say about that. The final game. Here is the final of the 76ers and the Celtics. As you can see, things got really interesting the last few minutes of the game. I'm going to say the last 2 minutes, where the score was pretty much 103-97 at one point in this game. So the 76, and right here, 103-97 with 4 minutes left in the game. But as you can see, the Celtics made timely shots with Namis Quetta with a shot right there and a foul. Here is Derrick Jones, Jaylen Brown for a 3. He missed it. Namis Quetta again with a rebound, and he went back up. And it was pretty much game over after that, because, as you can see, the Celtics went on ahead and won by 16. Now, one thing that I can say, the finality for the show is I'm going to show you all the updated current NBA standings, and who do you all think who is going to face in the first round? Which team is going to face each other in the first round? Because one thing that I can say, okay, playoff scenarios, I'm going to break it down. First, we have the play-in tournament. 7 plays 10, 8 plays 9. So Orlando, if the play-in tournament started today, everybody, Orlando would play the Charlotte Hornets, and the winner of the Charlotte Hornets would face the Detroit Pistons. Miami and Atlanta, the winner of Miami and Atlanta would face the Boston Celtics. For the Western Conference, Phoenix would play Portland. 7 and 10 would play. 8 and 9, Golden State and the LA Clippers would play. The winner of Phoenix, Portland would face Oklahoma City. The winner of Golden State, LA would face the San Antonio Spurs. And basically after that, everybody that is in the top 6 would play each other. So you have a breakdown of the play-in tournament and the playoffs. So with that, that is my reaction to NBA Sunday afternoon games. And here is the current Western Conference standings and the Eastern Conference standings. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to Keytime Sports right here on YouTube, Key City Sports on Instagram, and the KeyOnMillions.co. We have live merchandise. We are going to have more merchandise within the coming weeks. Here is my profile so that you will know it's me. Here is my media feed for all my different segments, NBA segments, football segments, and NBA and NFL free agency will happen starting next week. So we are going to have a bunch of NFL coverage, a bunch of NBA coverage, and March Madness for college basketball is going to start later on this month. So we are getting to that point in basketball season where it's playoff time, and you do not want to miss any of the content that I have. And remember, everybody, one last thing: the key is always on time.